It is the 29th for the first 2026. The time is 20 minutes past 8, and as always, that means that there are a multitude of F1 centric threads on the docket, not least of which Adrian Newey's AMR26. Oh, the humanity, the community has lost its mind. Is that, ladies and gentlemen, non-rhetorical, open and honest question, is that the market leader? Have we seen today, unveiled by Aston Martin, the winner of the Drivers and Constructors Championship? This is where it gets techie chat, because of course the context is this. Adrian Newey is the last airbender. Read his book, How to Build a Car, and you will see builds his racing cars in a way that's holistic, nothing siloed, everything sort of a design philosophy, synchronicity, Rubik's Cube, and for that he deserves credit. Right, 13 constructors, 12 drivers. There is no surer guarantee of F1 success than the one that they call Adrian Newey, and now all of a sudden we have his car, and not before bloody time, Adrian. You know what I mean? The penultimate day of private tests, for flip's sake. So that says one thing, that they weren't prepared, that they lacked for logistical competence, let's say critical path analysis settings. However, now that they're here, some are saying, well, Adrian Newey always cuts close to the bone. Do you know what I mean? This dude goes full send, 10 tenths at each and every single juncture. So we'll look at some Adrian Newey. We'll look at his car, AMR26. So too, we'll talk about Maximilian Verstappen, set to come back in play, get a full day's worth of testing tomorrow. But word on the F1 curb is that it could get a bit techie than techie things for one Maximilian Verstappen. In the first instance, this is how it started. The AMR26 being jetted in, or at least transported in, by dint of a big HRV yesterday. This is Natchez taking the pictures.
Este es el camión que está transportando.
This is the truck that's transporting it. The AMR, the AMR26.
De Momelo ahora mismo. Lo tenemos.
Oh, they were tracking it. They were tracking it. They knew.
No, cállate. Dejando pasar a Aston Martin.
They're cracking jokes that this is the only time. Spanish fans, by the way, full send on Fernando Alonso's third championship, saying that this is the only time this year that a Mercedes will overtake an Aston Martin.
Vale, vamos a pasar al lado, ¿eh? Aquí lo tenemos. Escasos metros del AMR26. Buena. Hola, nos ha dado las gracias. Chao. Nos ha dado las gracias. Este es el...
They get the signal of approval. That's how it started. This is not less than 24 hours ago. They shipped the bloody car half built in, and then overnight it had to get techier than techie things. Here's some of the imagery, or the first video.
Ahí está, ahí está, ahí está. Ahí está. Ahí está, ahí está, ahí está. Ahí está.
Techier than techie things. You guys there need to see my half-built set. Let me tell you what about that bloody car. That car looks half decent, eh? It looks, I like the matte, but again, they will stick some green livery on at some point. However, then you get to see this. Mate, I don't hate it. I don't hate it. What jumps off the page there as far as the design feature is the bloody gill just in front of the right rear tyre. What is that doing, chat? Well, the F1 Twitter's verse has dissected for it, talked about it. See this in zoom. No other car of the other 10 on the grid has that. This is techier than techie things now. Now, Mercedes is no longer the only one. This is to the front wing, because compare and contrast this with, as of the time of writing, Mercedes, the one who some say are the market lead. You remember that if it is testing, that you measure currency, in testing is not how quick you can go, but how many laps you can get in. This is a capture. Mercedes have been nailing it on every single front, right? Most laps, quickest laps. Mercedes put forth to the design philosophy supposition, a different wing attaching the nose to the second plane. Guess who else has done that? Adrian bloody Newey. Mercedes is no longer, says Natchez 98, the only team to have done this. Aston Martin also anchors the nose onto the second flap. Oh, and by the way, as much as these techier than techie bits are above my head, this time tomorrow night, Dr. Obbs will be on dissecting and translating for all of these design philosophy nuances. Watching the videos of the AMR26 pulled off track. G-Man will get to it, mate. I don't want to bury the lead. Let me show you this. 4K pictures now. Not just the bloody black and white one that they officially released. And why did they release black and white for? For Pete's sake, well, I'm through with F1 and its PR shenanigans over the past couple of days. Private tests, black and white pictures. What are we doing? Disrespect the fans without telling them that you're disrespecting them. And then we get this shot. I do not hate this one. Sun setting, Barcelona, Circuit de Catalunya, matte black livery, Adrian Newey AMR 26. Inject it into my veins. And then you get holiness on Twitter. Again, let me pull this up so you can't see my half-baked set. Holiness on Twitter, legend, has compared and contrasted the Adrian Newey McLaren, the West McLaren of 1998-1999. Here's where it gets techie. Those bits look a bit familiar, don't they? He's bringing in lessons learned from all of the aforementioned. It is the McLaren in the late 90s, of course, Red Bull in the early 2000s, and most recently the 2021 RB16B. Let me show you about that then, as this is where it gets techie, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury. Aston Martin F1 Insights says a couple different things to the rear suspension, and the rear suspension is what everybody's most impressed by. To that, it says this is by far the most aggressive design that we've seen during private testing. It looks a lot more developed, says Aston Martin F1 Insights, than the rest. The front and rear suspensions are diabolical with those radical geometries. The packaging is an engineering masterpiece. Adrian Newey absolutely wouldn't disappoint. Now listen, I do know that F1 has a tendency to do one of these bandwagon settings, do you know what I mean? Everybody's expecting Adrian Newey to deliver something that's genius, to expedite for his learning curve, to shorten his payback period. I get it, but sometimes you want to go against the grain though. Just because it is Adrian Newey, does this mean necessarily that this is a market-leading car? Not a market-leading aero package, because of course Adrian Newey will design one of those, but a market-leading car. Lest we forget, going into 2026, this is all about PUs, and Honda have told us a gazillion times already, open and honest in their self-critique, that they are behind the curve, that their PU is overweight and underpowered. They didn't say anything about the compression ratio loophole, because they haven't weaponized for it, as have Red Bull, Ford and Mercedes. And I put forth that could be a big problem. Now, in some circles, people are saying that Adrian Newey's, just as it was in 2010 to 2014, that Adrian Newey's aero package is worth at least what the compression ratio loophole is worth to Mercedes and Red Bull, Ford. That indeed Adrian Newey's genius more than offsets potentially that compression ratio deficit. But I'm not sure, chat. Power unit rule and reg set. Mercedes, this is 2014 all over again. Is it not? Oh, and by the way, again, I don't know who I've stolen this from, but shout out to them on Twitter. A couple of different things here that you want to pick up. The hollow side pods of Aston Martin. Record those from Red Bull. They came from Adrian Newey. He's borrowing from his previous genius designs. That these are highly developed winglets. Okay, so you got winglet. I think this is Dr. Rob's, by the way. Winglets at the wakeboard, and the Honda engine cover narrows a lot, heading towards the rear suspension. Every pencil stroke is thoughtful and worked out. It feels like other teams have arrived in Barcelona with more basic single-seaters, but that shouldn't come as a surprise either, for he's the last airbender, right? AMR 26 rolled out of the factory on Wednesday morning. Adrian wasn't messing around, looking to use up every second worth of design time. Here's what the Kaiser says again: all F1 journeys are created equally, but some are created more equal than others. The case is one of the decent ones. There was a reason why Newey homologated the suspension very late. The panel is raised to attach the wishbones as high as possible by adopting a similar bracket, I don't even know what that is. Again, one for Dr. Obbs tomorrow. Simul bracket solution. The rear wing pylons are inverted yet, whatever that means. Way to go over my head. The Kaiser, this is far too techier than techie things. And again, Rosario Giuliani says the following and draws it out very nicely. Again, talking about suspension, that the rear suspension features a link wishbone that attaches to the base of the rear wing's double pylon. This is a very high arrangement, clearly for aerodynamic reasons. Of course, everything he does is at the altar of aerodynamic efficiency. For this is Adrian Newey, last airbender, did his thesis at university in 1980 something in ground effect in sports car. And what do you want about? Of course, he's missed the aerodynamic efficiency. This is very high arrangement, clearly for aerodynamic reasons. Was a similar concept on Newey's cars to the highly complex rear suspension of the Red Bull RB16B, which spent its tokens on rear end gearbox upgrades in 21. Let me tell you guys a secret about this. This is what I've been able to glean. Again, you can take this one to the bank. So demanding was Adrian Newey of his team that he worked with, particularly the gearbox guys, that they grew to hate him. He wanted them to package it so neatly, so compactly, that he could leverage bits and bobs and weaponize the aero around the gearbox, that his team grew to hate him. His colleagues just thought he was a pain in the ASS. And then that came back to bite them ultimately, because they couldn't change the rear suspension when the Red Bull iteration of car became an understeer merchant. They couldn't change all of that stuff without changing the gearbox. So holistic and so acute is Adrian Newey's mind to design philosophy, sensitivity. He wants that synchronicity. Even it all needs to be in sync. That's who we're dealing with here. Go on, let me show you this car though, because I do like it. I appreciate it. I think it's very so I've taken the official imagery and just increased the brightness ever so slightly. Me trying to get a bit techie on Photoshop. There's a couple of things that stick out. So we've talked about the front wing initially, the front nose being tapped to the second plane. Don't hate that. Look at the aggressive side pods though. Super thin, super slender, super efficient. They remind me ever so slightly of the Red Bull. You know what I mean? The RB21, it looks exactly like that. I swear, if you were to put Red Bull livery on there, you'd be forgiven for thinking it was the same car. The rear suspension, I have no idea, but it sounds like it's very complicated. And he's done some other sexy bits and bobs. Let me show you this image. I don't hate this one either. This is the proper image, right, in 4K. I can't wait to see the green livery on it. However, with all that said, you know what I mean? There is an old adage, as old as F1, and that is this. One must first finish to finish first. You see that Lance Stroll was out there today and shortly thereafter beached on the bloody site. Now again, we're being told that this isn't anything too serious. This isn't it wasn't a terminal. Like the cause of this wasn't, you know what I mean? Not so material of consequence that you want to be concerned, but yet and still, Lance Stroll beached out on the bloody side. I tell you what's chaos. Adrian has a tendency to do this, be almost too ambitious with the car. This was the problem back in the early 2000s with Kimi Räikkönen, a super fast driver, some say fastest on the grid at the time, but he couldn't get it over the line because the car had been built in a way that was far too ambitious. That comes with unreliability. Hopefully Adrian Newey, some say, in conjunction with Ford, hasn't done that here, but again, it's just testing and one potentially shouldn't read too much into that. Here are your times, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury. So Charles, you're an absolute gangster, sir. I appreciate you ad infinitum. Here are your times, and this is what you need to know. Let me get them back up. Look who that is. King George Russell, yeah. Day 4. Again, who's that bloke? What are we doing here? I don't even know. Sir Charles, you're a legend. Well. What do we have here? Nando, you ready for this cold drop? He must speak to why he abandoned Drizzy P. You foul-breathed, snaggle-toothed bastard. Let's go. Oh, Sir Charles, you're a legend, mate. Obviously, mate. So go on then. Here's what's important. And I know a caveat at the outset, big fat dirty asterisk, it is testing and we shouldn't invest too much in these times. Why? Because you've got to normalize for a gazillion different variables about which we have no idea. How about the fuel? What tires are they using? What program were they on? What was the state of the track? But yet and still, it's a bit of F1 barbershop talk. I can't help myself. I'm a moth to an F1 flame as far as hypotheticals. George Russell again on day 4. They did tell us that they were about to do some hot laps. All the time they'd been they'd been topping the timing sheet erstwhile. Those have been their bloody long runs. George said that they were going to put on some softs today and get some proper hot laps in. A 1:16.445 on 77 laps from King George Russell of Kings Lynn, Norfolk, down the road from his teammate Kimi Antonelli to the tune of 0.6 of a second. Down the road from the rest, what is that? An 18-2, almost 2 seconds. Oh, the humanity. Now, of course, I don't know whether the other guys were on softs, but we know earlier in the session, I want to say Tuesday, Wednesday, you'll recall George Russell per Ted Kravitz was on C1s, the very hardest of tyre. Isaac Hadjar, by dint of the fact that Red Bull have not bought any C1s, would have been on C2s or C3s at the very least. Now, offset for the time in Delta, Isaac Hadjar wasn't that much quicker than George. I want to say between 3 and 4 tenths maybe. And we know that the C1 to the C2 is worth anywhere between 0.8 and 1 second. Normalise for that then, and that puts George Russell down the road to the tune of half a second on the I tell you what, Mercedes have the whip hand chat, and I am left really, really nervous about this season. Everything that you hear and see from George Russell is chaos. You heard Chauvelin say the only thing that held us up wasn't our car or reliability. It was nothing to do. We were ahead of schedule. It was the other muggles on track. It was their reliability. The likes of Red Bull parking up because of excessive heat in the electric portion of the PU. It's the likes of Audi. Every single time they come out, it's reliability issues. It's these other muggles that are holding us up. A hot lap would have been 1:14. I'm telling you, John, ZU here. Could have been Lewis potentially. Sir Charles Edward Cheese is absolutely KB Premium, a legend of the upper echelon varieties. YouTube bugging. AMR 26 front wing looks a bit underdeveloped compared to the MCL 30. How do you know, Miami? This is where we go deep, head first into the speculation. I tell you what, I'm going to speculate one thing. If I were a betting man at this juncture, my money can only go in one direction. Of course, Maximilian Verstappen is the best driver, but I just doubt. There is a lingering sense of doubt and skepticism around all of the other projects not named Mercedes. Let's talk about Red Bull very quickly, because I'm keen. Something's going on here. Now, we talked about Maximilian Verstappen's reaction earlier. Back in Monaco for now. Why did Max Verstappen go back to Monaco? Did Red Bull just give him the day off? Potentially, because they knew they weren't going to run on Thursday today. Come back tomorrow, Max, and we go again. However, somebody said on Reddit that you would have seen a gazillion times that the teams and the engineers would have fixed that Isaac Hadjar car without compunction. Quick, easy fix. Just get that sorted and get them back out on track. If, of course, you're looking to pull times and do due diligence, you need to get some laps in. So why then again? Why then did Maximilian Verstappen go home? Is chaos this? I don't know. Max Verstappen in a video that we looked at earlier didn't look too happy, but of course he's reacting to Champions League results, PSV not doing too well, his team. But I think it might be something more insidious than that, because then you get the Auto Racer article today talking about lack of reliability as far as Red Bull powertrains, that their electric portion is overheating, as are many of the other teams. I think it could listen, Houston, I think we have a problem, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury, as far as Max Verstappen's hopes of becoming 4, soon to be 5-time champion, and the odds makers agree. Polymarket has George Russell as a favourite, winning 30% of the time if indeed you run a championship of the driver's variety 100 times. Therefore, George will win 30 of them, and that fills me with woe and dread. Once upon a time, over the past few weeks, that would have been Max Verstappen, for he was favourite then. Now it's all George Russell. Max Verstappen getting punished because of his car, vicariously for the sins of Red Bull Ford powertrains. It's going to get techie. I reckon Max took it upon himself to go back while the car was being sorted. Potentially, Mr. B, sometimes you've got to leverage a bit of Occam's razor, right? The simplest explanation is often the one that plays. No, there's YouTube bit. Was YouTube being stupid, John? Tell me. Monaco, Barcelona is 30 minutes away. It's not far. This is true. Max didn't go back to Monaco. He wasn't even live gaming. Cameron, where was he then? I thought he went back. It would be, maybe I've got that one wrong. I will fact check. It would be epic to have Max versus Alonso fight for the title. What about George though? George and Kimi, you've seen the times already. Max only downside. Remember, Max has the capacity to do more than your average driver. Mention no names. James Hinchcliffe, Mr. B, his bandwidth. I mean, copy. Bravo, James Hinchcliffe, for pointing out the obvious. But the first person to tell me that was a chap called Break F1. You remember him? Blake Kinsey. When I asked him many moons ago, I think the video is still on the channel. When I asked him many moons ago what separates Max and the rest, what's the difference between the very good and the very great, he said that it's not necessarily his speed or his ability to execute in a way that's almost metronomic. He said of Max Verstappen it was his ability to be driving the car at 10 tenths as of lap 1 FP1 and have all this excess CPU, like 20% of bandwidth just sat there. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a difference. But I tell you what, not to compare George to Max, but I've been watching that Singapore qualifying lap ad nauseum over the past 24 hours. I never thought that George had it in his locker to out-qualify Max Verstappen that session. I just didn't think it. Max had been the difference, or almost, he'd made a routine of it at that point in the season, hadn't he? He wasn't too bad, that Max Verstappen fella. I thought that he had it in the bag. Singapore qualifying 2025. Go back and watch George on the steering wheel. I have never ever seen somebody be so active on the steering wheel, not over the course of a race lap, over the course of a hot lap in quali. He's on the steering wheel, altering brake bias almost every turn. I counted 5 or 6 times on a qualifying lap. Listen, there are these times when drivers put forth their exhibit A, B and C that they're potentially a championship winner going for. I'm telling you, I think that dude is, I think he's becoming a butterfly, as was a caterpillar before our eyes. I'm telling you. Nando says, stop lying, Edward. You don't listen to Nando and Charles always getting at it. Banter, healthy each and every single time. It looks like Red Bull 2 cars are designed for extremes of engine hybrid cooling needs. So they had to be conservative, didn't they, G-Man? Because they didn't want it to overheat again, which is concerning again. Let's see how they fare tomorrow, right? Isaac Hadra got a load of laps in, but to my knowledge, if I recall correctly, Max has only gotten 27 in thus far. The car was parked, wasn't it? He didn't yeet it into the barrier, but the car was parked up. George cost me €2,000 by taking a sneaky pole from Max. I hate him. Yeah, you're not the only one, John. But I think that notwithstanding, I think you've got it. That lap was crazy, wasn't it, Easy? I've watched it back a gazillion times. Reminiscent of 2018 Sir Lewis, right? But again, I watched back Sir Lewis as a benchmark just to see whether he, in 2018, was as active on the steering wheel. One adjustment from Lewis in 2018, brake bias. George, 5 adjustments over the course of like a 70-second lap or what. Like, I'm telling you, chaos. Absolute chaos. Nobody's checking for J-Fold. Don't know where you're getting the Mercedes are killing it from. Go on, let's address this. Now we've got an argument, hence star. Don't know where you're getting the Mercedes are killing it from. They're the only ones that are using a higher engine mode. McLaren will have Mercedes for lunch. Go on then, hence star, to that point. Did you hear us earlier talking about designing these things holistically? You remember Pablo Elizalde wrote this brilliant article on Motorsports magazine where he talked about a design synchronicity. You'll remember also the eager-eyed amongst you that Ron Dennis once upon a time said that you can't win anything as a customer team. Now, you would argue that last year and the year before, as far as the constructors in 2024 and 2025, the drivers in 25, McLaren are the exception that prove the rule, especially going into a brand new rule and reg set. Mercedes can do whatever they want to, right? The power unit is theirs. They understand how to work with it, how to harmonise for it and the gearbox and the rest of the bloody car, the chassis, because the power unit is theirs. McLaren, Alpine, Williams have to take what they're given and work with it. All of the R&D that Mercedes have put into it, its shape, the dimensions, everything. And again, in this rule and reg set, 50-50 as far as ICE and electric. So too, you've got to consider the bloody aero on, aero off, the boost button, the overtake, the energy. It's a lot. It is a lot to consider. And nobody's going to tell me that because of that, Mercedes don't have the whip hand. This isn't me saying that McLaren won't nail it. The car looks very sexy. Of course, Rob Marshall is still a feature there. The last wing bender, some say. And they're not bad over there. Stella's got his mind right as far as all things F1. But that being said, some say that the period of dominance Red Bull from 22 all the way through to 24-ish, 23, definitely. Some say that period is a punctuation only, is a bookend to a longer term period of Mercedes dominance. Lest we forget, 2014 was the first year, split turbo hybrid settings. Since then, 2014 all the way through to 2021, theirs was the constructors. 21, of course, they lost the drivers, but that's the longest period of dominance in F1 history, if I recall correctly. And that this latest period of Red Bull McLaren dominance is only a bookend to it, and we're about to revert to the mean, the trend being your friend until there is a bend. Camry sandbagging. Can the other team see if Mercedes are doing that from the telemetry? So I think they can see. You can see, I think most often how you can see what engine mode they're using is how quickly they're going through the speed trap. And there is data on that. Lando Norris said that you get to 320 kph quicker than you did the previous iteration of cars. But there was somebody who went quicker. I want to say they did 347, but they'll be able to do. We don't have that telemetry. When they get to Bahrain, we'll get it multi-viewer. Then we'll be able to deep dive the data and understand a little bit more about engine modes. I heard from Marco once that Max could win in a hard. No, don't take. There is a thing called. No, you don't want to grice his razor, Dr. Helmut Marko there. You understand his sentiment more than to take something literally, right? Do you think he literally meant that he can get into a Haas and win? Well, that would be impossible, right? And Dr. Helmut Marko wouldn't be so naive to insinuate something so stupid. He's meaning that he's the difference maker, that he's worth anywhere between 2 and 3 tenths. Did you not hear McLaren's Ron Marshall state his car would be a B-spec first race, then steal the best designs from the field? I did hear the guys and girls over at the race, Scott Mitchell Mown and John Noble and Ed Straw, say that it's Rob Marshall's intention at McLaren to outdevelop the rest, that their first iteration of car will just be a draft, and they'll purvey the circumstance, have a cheeky look at the AMR 26 and leverage and steal the good ones, borrow the great ones, aerodynamicists and engineers both steal without compunction, and that's Rob Marshall's intention. Your boots are clean by now. If you're going by looks, that Aston Martin already won the championship, but he won't look like that Real Betis. He won't look like that come race number 1. Do you know what I mean? It will be green. I don't think it will look as stealthy. B2 bomber, stealthy. B29 Euro legend. 5 changes is nothing. Alonso Bahrain in Alpine. Think he got 20 changes in lap. Also, remember George steering wheel. True also, but he's a different man now. I'm going to go back and have a look at that. Alpine, Alonso Bahrain in the Alpine got 20 changes. I'll go and have a look at that. I'm keen. I'm happy to be there. I've never seen somebody, to be fair, make so many changes and then put it on pole. Because a qualifying lap, you've got to be dialed in, right? You're leaving it all on the line. It's 10 tenths, leaving very little lap time left on the table. So, like, I don't know. I just thought as long as I've been watching Formula One, I didn't see. B29, you're a legend, by the way. I appreciate you. Properly a legend. What do you think about the Ferraris? We're going over 10 minutes since we've turned it into a Q&A, Cameron. What do you think about the Ferraris WEC engineers coming to F1? Potentially pseudo Newey move for Ferrari. So TWM, I hope it works out. Listen, WEC, similar but not same TWM. If I were Ferrari, I wouldn't get too caught up on the fact that, Ferrari won WEC last year and blah, blah, blah. They keep doing that. They were going to bring in the bloody manager from the WEC team, weren't they? The TP. If indeed, go on then, get this. Let's forward forecast TWM. Imagine a world where Frederick Vasseur doesn't, and Ferrari, moreover, don't build themselves a race-winning F1 car for 2026. Where do you think they're going to get their next TP from? Because again, the Italian media is suggesting that Fred has 6 races in 2026 to turn this around and start making and showing some progress. Where do you think they'll get their next guy from? I think the first place that they'll look is the WEC team. There's still that guy straight away, whose name I can't remember, by the way. But they've been talking about it. So, I don't know, John was on Ye Listener before it got, oh no, shame Ye Listener got taken down. Can you imagine? F1 needs to get out of its own way. Not even that. Don't even get me started on content. Everything is content, yeah, and you're going to disable ye listener. What for? One of the go-test. It's a slap in the face of the existing personnel. Freddie's gonzo. Me, I think that too. Easy G. TWM, that is a classy pseudo-new. Yeah, pseudo-new. It's a very classy term. Does this year test the driver's talent year or fastest car? It's a PU rule and reg set, they're saying. Yeah, the PU is going to be all important. So I think, do you want the fastest driver or the fastest car? I think you go fastest car each and every single time, right? There's only so much that a Max or a Charles can do. Like every time this happens, every time it's like and this is a big rule change, by the way, one of the biggest. Every time this happens, one or two teams gets the jump right. It might be a Mercedes and the McLaren and the Red Bull. Like there will be one or two that like the expedite for their learning curve, consequently more than the rest. And then over the course of a period of 2028, 29, I think 29, and then 2030, you get new power units. So like over the course of the next like 4 or 5 years, convergence settings, and then in the final year of this rule set, all of a sudden we'll get gangbuster racing like we've had in the past 2 years, and then they'll bloody change it again. It's like, for crying out loud. Honestly, F1, get out of your own way. Yeah, no, you listeners. If you haven't seen Ye Listener already, go and check him out on you. I think he's still out, to be fair, but F1 decided they didn't want him. He did use a lot of footage, bless him, but it was transformative, some say. Look at 25. If Max was the difference maker, he would have gotten it over the line. The car will always be the bigger factor. So, Kevin, I think people tend to say that it's like 60-40. I've heard Peter Wins, a friend of the channel, say that it's 60-70. Like, most of the vast portion, again, let me not bury the lead and be drowned in semantics. The vast portion of the causation of winning is in the car. You can't win anything if you don't have a race winning car. But you have this conversation under the aegis of it being a difference in extents, not kinds. If Max wasn't able to make the difference, then how did he drop it on Paul in Suzuka or Saudi Arabia or the British Grand Prix? How did he overtake Oscar Piastri round the outside at the Emilia Romagna? Do you know what I mean? There are times when the car's just quick enough to where you're going to see a Max or a Charles make a difference. Max is hardly acting as a team player. Max threw his toys out the car and went home. Henstar says, do you know that for a fact, Henstar? Or did Red Bull say that he could go? I don't know. This is speculation and conjecture. Talk to myself, of course. Oh, let's all mentally prepare for Stroll winning races. Behave yourself, Alpha. Fernando Alonso is not going to have that. Unless, can you imagine they start sabotaging Fernando Alonso's car? Oh, the humanity. It's getting too techy. If Fred can't bring Ferrari around, I think it's fair. 5 or 6 races. No. I don't know, levitation. I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair, but that's what they'll do. Forget what I think. It doesn't matter. I'm a F1 numpty, and Ferrari are going to do whatever they want because they always have done. They are that stubborn, and they will keep being that stubborn. God tier levels of seizing defeat from the jaws of victory. They are. You guys have been legends. Listen, back tomorrow 10 a.m. and 8 p.m. We go long this time tomorrow, longer than now. But you boys got to bloody get on that exercise bike and lose some weight. I am way over being match fit, and I've got to rectify that. You guys are legends, one and all. I appreciate you, each and every single one of you, to the moon. Back to Charles Edward Cheese. You're a legends. Between now and next time, prosecution rests. No further questions, Your Honour.